You didn't let it show when the world forgot you. Sidelined, pushed down, forgotten. The faceless casualty of a global tragedy. They would never have guessed what it cost you. The war raging worldwide but changing your daily life. The crisis hurting us all but you most of all. And in the darkness of the everyday living of it, suddenly the solution becomes visible within it. That's when your life becomes the answer, and your hope, the fuel to make the change. You fight through the darkest moments so that no one else suffers one more day. And now we join you to find the answers. We know that, together, we'll find a way.
Hello everyone and welcome to the ICWES18 online preview event. As you probably already know, the local organizing committee and INWES have decided to postpone ICWES18 until 2021 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. However, we are delighted to be offering this exclusive event as a precursor of ICWES18 to take place in September 2021. I would like to thank you all very much for the interest and the support that you have shown to this online event. I can see a very big number of participants at the moment and many more are joining us as we go through. So many thanks. It means so much to us under these uncertain circumstances. I would like to begin this event by introducing the speakers and also our event team. I will start with myself. So my name is Georgia Kremmyda. I'm a professor in civil and environmental engineering at the University of Warwick. And today I am here in this event as the chair of ICWES18. Today with us, we are having our INWES president, Gail Mattson. Gail, thank you so much for being here today with us. We are having Jayshree Seth, corporate scientist from 3M. Thank you so much, Jayshree. We are having Raffaella Ocone, professor from Heriot-Watt University. Thank you so much, Raffaella, for being here with us. And we are also having my colleague, Faye Padfield, ICWES18 manager from the University of Warwick, who will be the moderator of the session. And behind the scenes, there is also Stephanie Connach, conference officer, and Steve Tyler, who is the production manager from the Warwick conferences. Thank you so much, everyone. This event wouldn't be possible without your support and all the effort that you have put together. Before we start, I would like to share with everyone some information about the process that we are going to follow today. So a little bit of housekeeping. The event involves three exciting presentations from Gail, Jayshree, and Raffaella. And at the end of this session, I will be presenting shortly on the shape of ICWES18. Each speaker will deliver a presentation of 20 minutes or so. And once its presentation is finished, you will have the opportunity to answer, to make questions. So please use the chat function at the bottom of your window to type in your questions. And once the presentations are finished, we will be reading out these questions and the speakers will be providing answers. Finally, please use hashtag ICWES18 to share your enthusiasm, thoughts, and experience from the event on Twitter or on any other social media channels. And that is all from myself. Once again, thank you so much for joining us for this event. And I would like to invite Gail, our first speaker, to deliver her talk on status of women in STEM and recent efforts to enhance diversity and inclusion.
Thank you very much for organizing this, Georgia, this morning. I really appreciate this. And I'm excited to see all the people that have been joining this so far. I've recognized a lot of names and faces, so thank you very much. So it's a pleasure for me this morning as the INWES president to introduce you to INWES, for those that are not familiar with INWES, but also ICWES, the international conferences. So let me get started. Can you see the screen very well, Georgia?
We can see your screen very well, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, For those who are not familiar with INWES, INWES is a global network of organizations of women in science, technology, engineering, and math, with organizational members, university members, individual members, and corporate partners, representing over 250,000 women from 50 countries worldwide. Our mission is to build a better future worldwide through the full and effective participation of women and girls in all aspects of STEM. Little history about ICWES. ICWES stands for the International Conference for Women Engineers and Scientists, and the first one was held in 1964. And a continuing committee of international conferences for women in science have been successfully organizing an international conference almost every 3 or 4 years since then. Here's just a recap of the conferences that were held from 1964 through 2002. And you can see that they're all over the world. But this ICWES committee had no address, no formal structure, no legal entity or liability protection, and a floating membership. But it was a long-standing international network of experienced women engineers and scientists on which to build INWES as a new entity to continue the conferences. In 1999, the Science Agenda Framework for Action, adopted by the World Conference on Science, identified in Article 90 that special efforts should be entailed to establish an international network of women and scientists. So based on that initiative, a group of women got together in 2001 and had a meeting to form and look at the idea of coming up with this international network. At ICWES 12 in Canada in 2002, the delegates voted unanimously to create INWES based on their efforts. In 2003, INWES was incorporated in Canada as a non-for-profit organization. It became an official non-government organization or NGO partner of UNESCO in 2008. And 2017, it was granted consultative status with the United Nations and observer status with the United Nations Framework for Climate Change. This quote at the bottom is, if you go to the UN Women and you look at their efforts on STEM, one of the organizations that they cite that they're supporting at the international level is INWES. So let me just quickly hit some of our functional areas. Through advocacy in many venues, we provided international voice for women in STEM careers, such as at the UN Women or UNESCO events and other international conferences. We produce quarterly newsletters regarding women on STEM activities and events worldwide. We share research via conferences, publications, and collaborations. So these are not only our own conferences, but conferences that we participate in, like the World Federation of Engineering Organization, AAAS, other international conferences. And we're working on establishing a web portal to share information on women in STEM. We've also been establishing relationships with corporations and foundations to support travel for women in STEM, to study abroad or attend workshops and present research at various conferences. A big thing we've been working on is encouraging the establishment of new organizations for women in STEM for professional development and recognition. We've helped in the last few years start organizations for women in STEM, Nepal and Mongolia, Sri Lanka, various other locations, Uganda. So this is a big thing for women. Professional women don't have an organization. We help them start one with a kit and support and guidance. We also conduct programs and share best practices for outreach to girls and their parents, for encouragement for students, professionals, leadership development, and for our members. We also provide workshops for schools and universities, corporations, and professional organizations. So since INWES was formed in 2002, we have continued organizing and supporting the international conferences with the help from host organizations around the world. You can see here the one where we've had ICWES 13 since 2005 in Korea, and of course the one that we just talked about with Georgia, the ICWES 18, which now will be in 2021 in the UK. One of the things that INWES already started doing was starting regional conferences. We established regional networks for having conferences in between the big international conferences, so it was easier to travel and less costly. And you can see where we've started hosting these regional conferences around the world in different locations. And as we've established new regional networks and got more organizations involved, we now have multiple regional conferences in the same year. As you can see, in 2008, we had 3, one in Tunisia, Vietnam, and in Portugal, and then last year, 2 conferences. So let's start talking about women in STEM and some of the issues. And I know for many times I feel like I'm preaching to the choir, but I'm here today to help share what we've been doing and also the latest information. And I will be citing a lot of studies and various programs and so forth. And if you want any information from any of the things I'm citing here, please let me know. I'll be glad to share this research with you. That's what INWES is about, is gathering the information and sharing information about women in STEM. I think we all appreciate that access to STEM is one of the greatest challenges facing our societies today. But to make action, to really make something happen, we really need to look at different aspects of it. Obviously, there's political decision-making that has to be made to get more women involved in STEM at various levels. We know there's importance for women in STEM for both improving technology and innovation at all levels. But we also know it must be social progress and overcoming cultural norms in order to get more women in STEM. But we also need to stress the economic necessity, and I think more and more people are realizing the importance of that. So let me just touch on some of these real briefly. If we can't see representatives of 50% of the population in our universities and the workplace, then how can we expect to understand what people want and need to meet their needs? Women are essential now in new product development and addressing societal challenges, including, like the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and I'll stress those in a moment. So gender diversity now, as we know, is not just a nice to have. For innovation, it's vital for companies to have, they must adapt to a changing environment, and it's moving faster and faster. We need to get more women in the STEM pipeline to participate in all activities. So research and innovation. There's many studies that have been done in the last 10 years. I'm citing some of the most recent ones. This is one from 2008. The need for more women in science goes beyond just issues of fairness and ethics. Our world would be better off with more women in the labs. And this chart, I'm sure it's an eye chart for you, you can't see it, but it shows that the number of women in science in various countries is holding in around 20%, and this is worldwide. But we really need to have more women in science, and here's some examples for like seatbelt design. Once women got involved working with car companies, they changed the seatbelt design to deal with a smaller frame and with our chest and so forth, just making it make sense for half the people in the world using seatbelts. Drug development, women's bodies and hormones are different. They need to take that into effect in developing drugs. Safety equipment. I'm a safety engineer. When I started working in my field, I couldn't find right clothes to wear safely in terms of jackets and so forth. And we always had to customize them to make them fit all the women. It's crazy. Artificial intelligence language. We've been learning now that a lot of the early developments in AI need to do different language that's more respective and receptive for girls and women. Also robotics. A lot of the early robotics was done by men, but we know women will be using a lot of robotics in the future. Women need to be involved in developing robotics. A business case for gender diversity. Diverse teams outperform smart individuals when the problem is hard to solve. That was a recent study at the University of Michigan. Another study that was done back at a group of surveys in 2016 and 18, they did a survey of 1,700 companies in 8 countries and confirmed the innovation revenues really rise with diversity in 6 areas. So no ifs or no buts. Diverse companies are more innovative. Innovative companies are more diverse. But gender diversity has to go beyond tokenism, and inclusion is crucial. Another study done by Harvard Business School in 2019, where gender diversity is accepted with inclusion, productivity included innovation increases. So what INWES has been doing is trying to gather this information and share this information with our members. And so they can share it with their employers, corporations, foundations, and other organizations. So INWES is advocating that we need to include girls and women at all levels and aspects of STEM and education. So one thing we want to look at is fixing the number of women in STEM, the number of girls studying engineering, number of women going into engineering and staying in engineering and STEM fields and science. We want to value gender equality by governments, industry, academia. We need to fix the institutions so the institutions recognize the importance of women in STEM and support that. And we also need to work on gender mainstreaming in society so that STEM solutions address gender issues. We need to fix the knowledge across society so that people understand the importance of science and engineering, but also the importance of having women in science and engineering. A better world is the outcome of diversity. Technical organizations, engineering, tech, and science institutions are most likely to benefit from diversity. The complex problems of climate change, pandemics like we're in right now, are best solved by diverse and inclusive teams. The United Nations recognized this in their United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So if you're not familiar with United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, they were originally set up as a Millennium Declaration, their development goals for 2020, and then they updated them, expanded them with more support and activities and called them the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals for 2030. A lot of work to do. 193 countries have formally adopted this revolution to work towards the Sustainable Development Goals. And there's the link there if you're not familiar with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So I'm not going to talk about all these goals. What I want to focus on is goal number 5, gender equity. So what are most organizations and countries doing to achieve goal 5? There's removal of gender segregated work. Governments have resolved to empower women as effective ways to promote sustainable development. The UN framework for a convention on climate change in 2012 included gender equality as part of that framework for climate change. And they have separate committees now just working on the gender aspects of women working in climate change. Governments are to ensure equal access for women to full and productive employment and decent work. And this is stated in the requirements for all the 93 countries that accepted this. And a big emphasis recently has been girls in STEM, a new focus for education systems worldwide. So INWES is collaborating at various levels and through events, through the United Nations Women, through ESOC, and through the UNFCCC. So let's talk about some recent actions and interventions. So I want to talk about 3 different areas. First, fix the number of women in STEM, look at fixing institutions, and then what can we do to fix the knowledge? So here are some examples. There is an improving gender balance in STEM in Scotland that I'll talk about briefly. There's a Smart Sisters program in South Korea. In the European Union, they have a program called Hypatia, where they're looking at trying to get more women, girls in STEM, and all sorts of programs across the EU. Those that might be familiar with Girl Scouts or Girl Guides worldwide, they have a strong STEM program now, and they've redone their badges and stuff with a whole new focus on STEM. And there's many more examples of what we're doing to get girls into STEM. With regards to fixing institutions, there's a GAPC framework that I'll talk about briefly, talking about trying to get more women in STEM engineering studies. There's a Athena Swan program that I'll talk about briefly, and a sea change here in the United States, but there's many national efforts to increase number of women in STEM and leadership through programs, as well as quotas and charters. And then what are we doing to fix the knowledge or get information and share the information and knowledge? There's a lot of UN gender mainstreaming programs that are available through the UN. One of the main purposes of having ICWES is for women to get together so they can share their knowledge, what they've been doing, what the research they've been doing, what's working, to share that with each other. That's why we're having ICWES18. So that'll be a whole program area for ICWES18 is talking about women in STEM, different programs, what's successful. And also data. We need to get more data. That's what we've learned. Many countries are not tracking their women in STEM or their programs and so forth. And that's come out to the United Nations where they try to track the gender equality goal. They're not doing a good job of tracking. So what we're doing is encouraging more tracking of information. And one of the things we'll be doing is we're supporting Mothers in Science in a survey, and I'll talk about that briefly. So let me talk about first this program in Scotland. It was developed by the government, the Education Scotland, and Skills Development Scotland with the Institute of Physics. And they found that the girls in STEM events were not really changing the proportion of girls taking up STEM at school and so entering STEM workforce. So what this effort, the program they developed, tackles gender stereotyping and bias in schools from age 3 to 18. Reducing barriers preventing children from taking STEM subjects and considering all forms of stereotyping for both girls and for boys. And they provided extensive training and resources for the schools and the teachers. And they really were researching the attitudes of parents and children and teachers and school administrators as well as employers. And after they did this effort and went back and did a survey a couple years later, they found that 98% felt more informed about gender balance, and 98% found the engagement very, very useful. 95% felt like were likely to pass on the learning to their colleagues and other teachers, and 91% felt more likely to seek out further training in this area. So it's really got good feedback, and I have a link there if you'd like to get more information about the program. What recently came up with, and an effort that INWES has been working on with the WFEO, is supporting diversity for engineering education and engineering qualifications. So there's changes that were proposed in the graduate attribute and professional competency framework in 6 areas that were identified through this surveys of the International Engineering Alliance of the various universities that have engineering programs, as well as with the World Federation of Engineering Organizations, various members and their stakeholders. So the WFA proposes and INWES endorses these changes, and number 5 was diversity and inclusion, would include considerations within ways of working in teams, communications, compliance, environmental, legal systems, and etc. So this new framework for adoption by universities for engineering studies, it will be adopted by members of the WFEO, including engineering institutions, accrediting university programs in over 100 countries. So we really see that this is going to really be an impetus for change going forward in engineering curriculums and university programs. Let me just touch briefly on the Athena Swan program. This is Scientific Women Academic Network, which was launched at 10 universities in the UK in 2005, and is now spread to over 140,000 institutions. It supplies the different institutions and universities. They supply self-assessments to a nonprofit organization that judges the institutions on their inclusiveness and equality in hiring, promoting, and retaining female staff. And then they evaluate them at 3 different levels: bronze, silver, or gold. 90% of the university academics that were involved with the SWAN program felt it had a very positive impact. Here's an example. At the University of Liverpool, which got the Bronze Award in 2013, they improved to the silver level in 2016. And this was based on the proportion of women promoted to professor post increased from 28% to 50%. So obviously it's having an impact. Here in the United States, there's going to be a similar program that was kicked off in 2019. It's modeled after the Athena Swan program, and it's overseen by the Association for the Advancement of Science. And it'll be very similar in terms of accessing inclusiveness in regards to race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, disability, and socioeconomic status. As I mentioned, INWES has partnered with Mothers in Science for this survey. It's a survey of parents in STEM, both men and women at any stage in their career, about the impact of parenthood on their career profession. And it's going to be launched at the end of this month, and it's in multiple language, and we'll be sharing the results with our members, and identifies obstacles and how they vary for men and women in different countries. So I want to talk briefly about molding a gender-responsive STEM environment. We need to educate STEM employers about the current statistics, studies, and best practices regarding how to encourage, hire, promote, and retain and mentor advanced women in key professional leadership positions in industry and in organizations in the government. So one of the things you could be questioning your employer, what are they doing to work towards the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal, and specifically goal number 5? You should be going to your employers and asking, should the leadership in their corporations, organizations, and government be developing and implementing to mold gender responsive environments? For example, do they have a diversity inclusion plan? Do they provide D&I training at all levels for management? Do they address implicit bias in recruiting and promoting? Formal, informal mentoring programs, parental leave, flexible work schedules, on-site or reimbursed child. These are all things, we have a whole program and information we can share with you if you want to take this back to your employer and talk about, hey, are you considering doing this? Are you doing something to try to achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals, specifically number 5? So if you're interested in getting involved with INWES, this is how to join. We have applications online. You can subscribe to our quarterly newsletter to get information about women in STEM worldwide. We're also looking for lots of resources that we can share for a web portal. So please let us know if you've got a study or information that you think would be interesting for other people. You can follow us on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and Twitter to get involved. Obviously, you can participate in ICWES, like ICWES18 coming up. As if you're a member, you can get involved in our regional conferences, and we're always looking for more volunteers to work on our various committees. And if you have any questions, please contact me at president@inwes.org. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Gail. Fantastic talk and a very good summary of all the opportunities which are available for ensuring diversity, gender diversity and inclusion. Perfect. Faye, would you like to read out any questions that we have from the participants for Gail, please?
Yes, of course, no problem. Hi, everybody. So, Gail, question here from Dawn Bonfield. Is the Sea Change programme taking any of the Athena Swan recent review recommendations into account?
I would have to check. I was at AAAS at their annual meeting back in 2019 where they were kicking off the program, and they told me it was based on Athena Swan. I'm sure they're tracking it. AAAS is very anal about tracking information and research and so forth, but I will definitely go back with AAAS, who I represent for INWES, and find out that information.
Great. One of our participants, Peggy, has kindly put a link in the chat, actually, seachange.AAAS.org.
Thanks,
so,
Peggy.
Thank you very much.
Perfect. Any other questions for Gail?
Not at the not at the moment, no.
Okay.
That's perfect. Thank you so much, Gail. If any other questions arise later, you can contact Gail directly to her email address. Thank you so much, Gail.
Okay.
And thank you. And at this point, I would like to invite Jayshree to deliver her talk on the state of science, on the global perception of science and the need for STEM advocacy. So when you are ready, Jayshree.
Thank you. It was so exciting to see that people from around the globe are actually here. So that's very interesting because we all wanted to be together for this, but a pandemic got in the way. The nice thing is we are actually building resilience as a society. We may be virtual, but we're all united. It's almost so surreal that all of humanity is facing the same existential crisis. We are confronting the same fears, And we're all awaiting the same miracle of science. And science is, in fact, having its moment, actually, because of the pandemic, because people are now recognizing how important science is. So no surprise that a lot of the conversation as we deal with these multiple ongoing crises is on that topic. So we thought it would be great to share a few things we are learning as well as doing at 3M. Not sure how many of you know us. I hope a lot, especially the pandemic has risen our visibility because of all the PPE that we make. And science is the common thread across all our businesses. It is our most distinguishing characteristic and the foundational power behind our brand, 3M Science Applied to Life. And we live this every day, advancing companies, enhancing homes, and improving lives. And we want to be able to inspire and support others to do the same. We care about science. You, as a very science-minded audience, care about science. But we wanted to know what the world thinks about science. And we couldn't find any recent surveys that captured a public sentiment around science that was global in nature. And so we decided to undertake this study to understand the global perception of science. And I want to share some of the results of this survey, essentially capturing the global feelings around science. And so we started this in 2018, and here are the countries we surveyed in 2018. 14 countries around the globe, 1,000 respondents per country, and you can see they involve developed and developing country in this. So we call this the 3M State Assigned Index, year one, which was 2018. So the results of the survey that was conducted late in the year in 2017. So let me tell you first thing people understand what science is. So this is the word cloud that was generated by the respondents of the survey. So they understand it's the study of the world and the nature around us and things like that. But it was interesting when I shared this with my teenage daughter, and I said, look, people around the world understand what science is. And she said, sure they do. Science, you have to study, study, study. You have to work hard. You have no life. You can't see the world or nature. So everybody has a different perspective on word cloud. That day I understood that teenagers may not agree with you all the time. For those of you who know teenagers or our parents will totally understand this. So this was interesting, but what was really shocking and surprising was this statistic. 40% of the people, 4 out of 10 across the globe, said if science didn't exist, their lives would be no different. I repeat, 4 out of 10. 40% across the globe said if science didn't exist, my life would be no different. 32% of the people around the world say they are science skeptics. In this population of science skeptics, self-proclaimed, 60%, 6 out of 10 said if science didn't exist, their lives would be no different. So as you are getting over your shock, let me tell you, what were they taking their survey on? Their laptops and their mobile phones. So you see the problem? Science is invisible. Science is behind the scenes. Science is underappreciated, and science is taken for granted. And that's what we have to contend with. We found that excitement, people said, oh yes, I was excited about science when I was a kid, but not as an adult. There's a message in there for us, the science community, that there's something that happens when people grow up and somehow they're not engaged in science as much as we would want them to be. One of the barriers that was very evident came out of the survey. 36% of the global population said you have to be a genius to pursue a career in science. This is a huge issue. I mean, thank you very much, Albert Einstein, but no thanks, because now people think that in any career to do anything science related, you have to be a genius. Absolutely not true. Then we also found, kind of not surprising, that women trail in the positive sentiment of science. Again, this relates to many of the issues that Gail talked about. They could be political, cultural, social, what have you, but the data indicates. And there's many questions that address this sort of sentiment. But one of the things I want to share with you, because we are with a lot of engineers today, is when asked, do you believe engineering is a career that you can have a satisfying experience in? 25% of the men said, yeah, 9% of the women globally. So another example of women trailing in this positive sentiment, and that's one problem. We also found that millennials, the younger generation, are more likely to understand and appreciate science. They say they know more about science. They also seem to understand a little better that science and technology are not two completely separate things. Obviously, a lot of people think that, otherwise they wouldn't have said that if science didn't exist, my life would be no different, because there they were using technology, which you and I both know came from really good science that has been done many years ago. So people have to understand that the technology that is afforded to them is coming from all the good science work. Millennials also think about science in their daily lives way more than the average population. But the thing that was interesting is they have lofty expectations of science. In fact, I like to say they even blur the line between science fact and science fiction. They believe that in their lifetime, we will have, get this, flying cars, undersea living, teleportation. So you can see, people are, I don't care about science, it's not that important for me, my life would be no different. But by the way, science, could you deliver flying cars and undersea living and teleportation? So you see the disconnect. It is a very transactional relationship with science, which is not good for us, which is not good for science, it's not good for society or humanity. Now, this was another very interesting piece of information. So what I'm doing right now is I'm only pulling out, since we have only 20 minutes, some important things on the survey, but I'll give you the link so you can all play around with it. It's a fascinating website. So we have 92% of the people globally wanting their kids to know more about science, 92%. 82% of the adults, in fact, said they would encourage kids to pursue a career in science. So this is another disconnect. I don't care about science. I don't think I'm a science-minded person. It's not that important for me, but you kids, you go do science. Now, how does that work? We all who are parents know that on a standard basis, we are imparting our biases to our children. Now, how are the children gonna get excited about science if the parents are saying, well, science is not that important? So this is also another issue, but it's very interesting that deep down, they do understand that there is some value to science. So this obviously led us to believe that couple of things, I guess. First thing is science need advocates. I'm sure you'll all agree once you see results like that, it's like, whoa, there's something going on in the world that people are not seeing science for what it is, and that can have some serious consequences. So we need advocates, we need champions for science. But what also becomes very clear is people are not understanding that there is this bias and barrier that is going on in people's minds. So we've got to ask more questions to understand what that is. So I was called upon to be the chief science advocate for the company. And this was a new role that was created. And I had no idea what this role would be about. So as an engineer, I just broke it down into three parts after seeing the results of the survey. And frankly, being very disappointed first, dejected. And then it's like, whoa, we got to ask more questions, you know? So it's about awareness and appreciation. Bottom line, we need to raise the awareness and appreciation of the role science plays in our daily lives. And we have to start with young kids all the way to adults. We have to remind them constantly that this is everything that is around us is essentially afforded by good science. We have to break down barriers, that it is not just for geniuses. That is a significant barrier, and it will disproportionately impact women and little girls, because there is very well-known research out there which says that women do not feel confident in certain cases when they are told that they are things for genius or highly intelligent and things like that. It's just, and from an evolutionary perspective, not how, you know, it's processed in their brains. There's also the media bias. There's also the stereotyping, the role modeling that doesn't give you a very positive image, especially if you show scientists as mavericks or often male, you know, genius or nerd or evil. None of those little girls will aspire to be. Definitely not my daughter. She wanted to be the cool scientist, and that should be okay. So we've got to portray things that way. And then it's also very important, which is another thing that I learned, not just for myself, but for my daughter also, that the context is so important. But because I feel science has been laid out as a male-centric profession, it is so content-focused. And again, there is enough research out there that says that it's the context that inspires little girls, not the heavy focus on content. So we have to make sure we are communicating the context of what scientists do, how science solves problems, and why it is important to make the world a better place. And those are important things. And oh, if you don't recognize that's a picture of me, I don't look like that during the pandemic, but this was the art and science of lighting and good makeup. So interestingly, I love to share this picture because this is the one thing that impressed my daughter. She was like, oh, so you can look like this. And I'm like, see, that's what scientists do. So it doesn't matter what it is that inspires them. I think we have to open our minds to the possibility that it may just even be vanity, but it's okay. And it took me this mental journey to get there just by seeing how my daughter was encouraged and inspired by looking at this picture. And I always like to point this out. It may seem like a really low IQ point, but it has a tremendous impact on young impressionable minds. So that's the link for the website. You can go on it later because you'll be sucked into it for a few hours, because you can see countrywide data for every country that was there, demographic, age, everything. You can slice and dice the data. Very fascinating website. So obviously you are thinking the same thing. Whoa, you can't just stop with this 1 year. What happened? How did you understand why people were saying what we were saying? They were saying. So we dug deeper the next year. So these are the results of the 2019 survey. And of course, 87% of the people said, we do need science to solve world's biggest problems. Phew. So that was good to hear that they're understanding that it is needed for later. Then we have, what kind of issues do you want science to solve? And it relates to healthcare. It relates to all these humanitarian challenges. It leads to sustainability challenges. Those things are on people's radar. Specifically healthcare. Then now remember, this is before the pandemic, but still for them, science gets personal. So that's what's the really interesting part, is that people do care when it comes down to them, that science becomes important. However, we found that when asked if you would stand up and debate the merits of science and say it's important, only 20% said they would stand up. So there's a lot of room for us as a science community to bring more people along so that they can stand with us to debate the merits of science. Of course, a lot of emphasis on science communication. This is becoming more and more important, and everybody is beginning to recognize that. And it has really played out in the pandemic when you have politicians and leaders and scientists and the whole act that is going on, that you can actually see how the power balance shifts. People believe information that comes from scientists. They would rather believe that than be skeptical of it. But almost 60% of the people thought that scientists are elitist. So there's this media image, or an image that we somehow carry along with us that make people feel like, oh, they're elitist. So we have to tone down the way we speak and what we communicate, because people believe, over 80% said we need to be doing it in easy to understand language, which I believe is more contextual. It's not about dumbing down science, it's about making it more contextual. And people believe that, you know, if you taught about it in more relatable way, then it would be more impactful. So communication is key. And this is very important. Those who say they know more about science automatically view it more positively. No surprise there, but we have data now to show that. So we have to make that emphasis on that. So the question is, what have we been doing about this? So we looked at this data and it was very clear we need to talk to all sorts of groups across the entire spectrum, starting from students to teachers to professionals to women in STEM, in careers, and the entire gamut of everything. So that's what we've been doing. We also involved celebrities. So many of you may not recognize, there's 3 celebrities in these pictures. There's Grante Mahara, who used to host a program called Mythbusters, and you blow up stuff and it's very exciting and it gets people interested in science, specifically kids. We have a news anchor who was very popular in the US, Katie Couric, and we had her as a spokesperson for 1 year. And the first year we had Commander Scott Kelly, who's an astronaut who spent a year in space and literally spent that year so that his body could be studied for science when he returned, and compared to that of his twin brother who stayed on Earth. So he is an amazing spokesperson for science. He basically says, I was no genius. I was not excited about all that work, but I was inspired. And from the day I was inspired, I wanted to be this scientist and astronaut. So I went through this science field. So very, very down to earth kind of celebrity exposure that we needed for this data science index. We have also created what we call the Scientists as Storytellers Guide, which is based on all the results we got from the impact of communication that people said that they really desire. And we have celebrities and famous scientists in there also giving us tips and talking about how to communicate science with the lay audience. We created what we call Beyond the Beaker series, and we want to make sure that people portray scientists in a very positive light, so science can be portrayed in a positive light. So to take away from that image of this loner who sits up in the ivory tower, does not care about the world, and is cooking up stuff alone, that doesn't jive with anything that we do or should do or want to do. So this is about portraying 3M scientists, a diverse group of scientists doing ordinary human things and conveying the fact that they have just as the same desire as everybody else, hopes and wishes for the world and community. And then we did a podcast, which is called Science Champions. And here we take data from the survey, pick it apart and discuss it with scientists, science enthusiasts, parents, teachers, students, etc. So another interesting, engaging conversation. So now you're wondering, whoa, what about 2020? What did we do there? Well, of course, 2018 was the baseline. 2019 was trying to understand why behind these strange insights that we got. 2019 survey results were already available before the pandemic. So we started the survey at the end of 2019, and so the results came right before the pandemic hit. And here we evaluated trends in science perception based on these 3 years and asked more questions about equity and sustainability and everything that was going on. But it was very clear that 2020 results will only be powerful if we also have a pulse around the pandemic, because we all saw how science and the conversation around the science was put right on the world stage. So what we did, very exciting, is did a survey during the pandemic. So we actually have a pandemic pulse going on, and the results are being compiled as we speak. So stay tuned, and we are very excited in next month early to actually launch the results of State of Science Index 2020, which will have the survey results of pre-pandemic and also post-pandemic. So it should be very interesting to see what the world thinks about science in hashtag 2020. What we did also, while 3M was, scaling up their PPE production, many of our coworkers were working around the clock to make sure we can provide PPE around the world, and they were also working to with governments and other organizations to make sure it gets directed to where it's needed, working on fighting price gouging and fraud, and also working with communities to donate funds and time so that underrepresented communities can also deal with this pandemic. So we decided during that time to do something, because kids were now at home, and just in US alone, 55 million kids now distance learning science. So we created this video series called Science at Home. And in this, 3M scientists actually do simple experiments with household materials, baking soda, vinegar, and stuff like that. But these are really reinforcing the core principles that they need to know. And we do fun experiments that they can follow along, along with their parents and stuff. So this is launched, and we are very excited. It got lots of traction at the end of the school year, during summer, and so we're continuing to build on it during the next school year, because many of the schools are still in either distance learning mode or hybrid learning. What we also do is publish a lot of things that I write based on what I am seeing, what I have seen myself in my own journey, what I see with my kids. So I talk about the genius myth. Of course, it's a myth. You don't have to be a genius. I don't even understand what the definition of genius is fundamentally. In order to be successful in science, you need, persistence, resilience, creativity, innovation, all of that. So everybody can bring that along. There is no such thing as a genius. I talk about making STEM more attractive for girls. This is extremely important, because we know that girls start dropping out in their interest, in their expressed desire, and then we lose many women all the way in college and during their profession. I talked about health as well. This is a great way for us to remind people of the value of science, because they have themselves said that healthcare is one of the most important and top of mind issues for them even before the pandemic. So this is a perfect marriage right now of this crisis that shows that science will lead the way. I also talk about confidence. This is one of those topics that is very much debated in the outside world as to why women are not stepping up and this and that and why they have this gap. And I don't subscribe to that theory. It's not a gap. Why is mine called a gap? 50% of the people are, it's a gap, and for 50% it's normal. Why is it mine not normal and that's overconfidence that'll get us in trouble? Why isn't it that way? So it's another male-centric view of thinking about things and calling it a gap in comparison. Who is the judge to compare, and who cares who is on the edge and who is over the ledge, right? So I think we have to make sure we are inclusive of all of this, not just calling the women having a gap, because imagine people walking into a workplace thinking they have a gap. I don't think that should be even allowed. So lots of debate around that. You can read my articles on those and comment, and it's just my views on things. Left brain, right brain, another one of those myths. Oh, I'm not a science and math person. Those are all bad things to say because they impact your kids and other people who are listening to you. And then I talk about being leaders. Leadership is not about climbing that rung and trying to be the CEO. If you have those desires, great, good for you. But for the rest of us who don't wish for that, we want to lead from wherever we are, and it's possible. I've shown that in my career, that you can lead from your own rung of the ladder. The definition of leadership is very different in people's mind, and so is the definition of success. And then I talk about how to make sure we always keep science advocacy in the limelight. And it's important because people are obviously not understanding that science is important. So we have to keep doing that. And then I talk about the problem of female underrepresentation. You saw in Gail's presentation also, this is really something that we have to focus on. And it was really exciting to see the numbers Gail showed on when you put metrics in place, when you start rating, suddenly things start moving. And that's a very important point that I also like to focus on. So we have to shatter the stereotypes. We cannot have that same, mad scientist, genius scientist, maverick scientist, we can't do that anymore. We have to show real role models. We have to tell the wholesome story. And what I mean by that is we have to talk about the context. Stop focusing on just the content, because that's just gonna get more little boys excited, not little girls. So the context is important. You have to provide exposure and environment. And men have to be allies and advocates. This is laid out in a male-centric way. They have to be allies and advocates. It's not a zero-sum game. We will all benefit from this. Gail has shown plenty of data around diversity and innovation and the direct connection. So this is for a benefit for all of us. And then metrics and measures, like we talked about. If you put those in place, suddenly you start seeing improvement. So it's very critical to do that. I also talk about how all of us can actually help in every little way we can. It's all about giving your voice to STEM, which I, in this case, am calling its sponsors, its teachers, its enthusiasts, its mentors. You really don't have to be in science. You really don't have to be a scientist. You can still help in your community by volunteering events, by organizing things, by inspiring students to connect up with scientists, to champion science programs in your community, and really engage with the science community locally. So this is a wonderful way for all of us, because it impacts all of us, whether we believe it or not. The science community has to be very sensitive to what the world thinks about science, and all these activities will definitely help get the word out. And that's what we're doing at 3M. It's very important for us. We have this goal to help underrepresented individuals to advance in STEM, so we work across the spectrum. And just in 2018 alone, we had an annual education investment of 34 million, which was increased to 41 million in 2019. And again, we do activities across the spectrum, and all of us are very excited to be involved in our communities around the globe and try to foster this love and conversation around science. And it all fits in for us together because we are working on science for circular in the labs, science for climate in the lab, and then science for community. We want to create a world, with science and have people join us, inspired and wanting to join us in this process. And this is also very important from the human level. And what I like to say is, what's the real shtick? It's STEM, it's science, humanities, technology, engineering, and math. We have to put a human face to whatever we do for many, many reasons. Let me give you one. 45% people will believe science only that aligns with their personal belief. This is scary. Science is not a belief system. And so in order to make sure that we are bringing people along, we have to keep humanities in the forefront. And this has been personally important for me. I did not grow up thinking I was a science and engineering kid. My dad was a university professor, so it was like, you are going to do this. And as a little girl growing up in India, I just did what my parents asked me to do. let me tell you, it was very difficult to make the connection of STEM careers with what I wanted to do, which was make the world a better place and all these communal goals. And now I find out there's a lot of research out there. And I saw it in my own daughter again. She wanted to do for communal goals. So we cannot have STEM careers portrayed this way. We have to have what we can see as communal goal congruity. So let's make sure people understand that this is about working hard for the greater good. And all of us can be STEM advocates. So when I was asked to be in a 3M ad, I actually took my journey along with this. And so I'd like to play that for you.
I recently spoke to a group of students about being a scientist at 3M. I wanted them to know that innovation is not just about that one aha moment. Science is a process. It takes time, dedication. It's a journey. We're constantly asking ourselves, how can we do things better and better? What we make has to work. We strive to protect you. At 3M, we're in pursuit of solutions that make people's lives better.
Thank you very much. Thank you for everything you all do. And thanks to the organizers for pivoting to a virtual mode to keep us all connected.
Jayshree, thank you so much. There are no words to say how much impressed I am from your presentation about the survey that you have shown. You will see later also the comments in the chat room. I'm sure that many of the participants are sharing the same feelings with myself. You will see also the comments on Twitter. Amazing presentation and amazing data and information you have provided to us. Congratulations and keep on doing the fantastic work that you are doing. Perfect. Thank you so much. Faye, would you like to read out any questions that we have for Jayshree?
Yes, of course. Just to echo what you said, Georgia, yes, there's a lot of conversation in Twitter and the chat about how shocking it is that 4 in 10 don't see the science as being important to their lives and things would be different, and other campaigns that are happening in other countries. So one question that's come up now is, did the millennials differ in their views on science between males and females, Jayshree?
There was a slight difference. I don't believe it was overwhelming, but I can't recall it from the 3 surveys. So it's easy to just go in there and actually check in the 3m.com/science index.
Okay, thank you. And a question that we had in advance actually from Forum Brown of Bombardier. What is one mental block that you still have being a diverse woman and working in a male-dominated environment that you cannot shift?
I would say that the one thing I've recognized is that every time I have to do something new, even if I have initiated it, I feel a sense of, oh my gosh, can I do this? And what I have realized that this is exactly what people call confidence gap, because there's data out there suggesting that men will say, I can do it, without even realizing whether they can or not. And it's not good or bad. Our survival depended on it. As evolution happened, men had to focus on killing that big beast, and they had to believe they could before killing it. And that's how I believe that they have evolved. And for women, it's more about doing a lot of different things and getting the validation from someone else that, yes, you can do it, you're getting good at it. And I believe that the way confidence is processed, perceived, and projected is different by women and men. So what I have done myself is, having been in my career for 27 years now, realize that, Jayshree, you're always going to have this feeling. You're always going to have this visitor who is uninvited, comes into your head and says, oh, I don't know whether you can do it. And it's the exact same thing happened to me when I was asked to be the chief science advocate. I'm like, what is this role? Why are you asking me? I have no idea what this is, and all this anxiety. But then you go, okay, Jayshree, have you done things like this before, where you forged a path where none existed? Yes, I have. Have you done this? Yes. Have you done this? Have you done this? And then you have to talk yourself in what I call is the virtuous cycle, so that you don't get captured and fall in this vicious cycle. In fact, if you go to YouTube and look up my name with SWE closing keynote, which was the closing keynote in Anaheim, California, I talk specifically about this issue as to how you can overcome what I still feel to this day, but I know how to deal with it. And I want younger women to get this virtuous cycle going so that they don't feel and get sort of deflated by this. I use it to now gain energy and understand and accept this and overcome it. Does that make sense?
Excellent. Yes, very good way of describing how to sort of harness your confidence and being aware of those self-doubt that creeps in. Interesting what you say that men are very confident in what they do. One of our chats noted men suffer from overconfidence, and it's interesting to know where evolutionary comes from, really.
Yeah, our survival depended on it. And again, our survival depends on women overcoming this, while the management and men, everybody understanding that theirs may be hubris. So you just got to balance it out, because our survival depends on it. We need women, we need underrepresented minorities. We're not going to solve these problems creatively, and we know we've got problems.
Yeah. Thank you.
Perfect.
Another question's just come in from Vrinda, who is a current university student. She'd like to know how she can start her career advocating for science.
Start at any level you can. I laid out the voice methodology. So even in your community, with your relatives, around you, in your university, gather together and say, we're gonna go to high schools or middle schools, hold science fairs, bring students to the university, show them what you do. Every little thing matters, is what I'll say. And you never know what really lights up that spark in a child's brain. You never know that.
Perfect.
Excellent.
Fantastic, Jayshree.
Thank you.
It was so inspiring. Thank you so much. If there are no more questions for Jayshree, we would like to thank you very much once again. And we are looking forward to your talk next year. I suppose you will have more data to share with us and more activities of the fantastic work that you are doing at 3M. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
So at this point, I would like to invite our next speaker, Raffaella, who is going to be delivering a talk on engineering diversity and inclusion, reflections and perspectives. So Raffaella, when you are ready, please share your screen, and we are looking forward to your talk.
So thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you today. Of course, I mean, I would have expected to be in Warwick and to be with you over there. Things have gone completely in a different way. And as a consequence of that, I have also tried to change slightly my presentation. It doesn't, I didn't change it so much about the reflections about the past, but more about the perspective for the futures, because I believe that the pandemic has changed the way we are going to operate next, especially in the area of engineering diversity and inclusion. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to reflect a little bit on my career. And in reflecting on my career, I'm going to tell you some stories. I have noticed in my relatively long career that when you tell people stories, people just relate it much more to what you say. And also, sometimes you can make a much better effect on them, and then you can convince probably youngsters to come into engineering. So I want to start from my journey from a very small town in the south of Italy. That's the town over there, no more than 4,000 people living in that town where I was born. I was born there, and this is a picture of me and my brother when we were two little kids. Of course, I mean, there was no question. My brother was a male, he had to drive. But my brother was not even interested in cars. He didn't want to know anything about cars at all. What he was really very much interested in was reading and writing. He was living here in a house at the edge of the town with my parents. And when he was 7 years old, he wrote a book on Karl Marx. I was living with my grandparents. I lived with my grandparents for more than 10 years. I lived at the other side of the town. And I really enjoyed very much reading. I didn't know anything about engineering. There were no engineers in my family. I just enjoyed very much reading. And I saw myself spending most of my time under a tree reading books, and I didn't want to be bothered by anyone else. Of course, I was also a very practical person or kid at the time, and I thought, well, I cannot really make money with just by reading under a tree. So I will buy some sheep and I will become a shepherd. The sheep will be my income. And then after many years, I found myself with a hard hat. And actually, my brother found himself to write really a book on Karl Marx. So he had great aspirations, had some other aspirations, but all of us did something different in life. So how did I start? As I said, I started reading a lot. And when I studied, I really enjoyed very much math and chemistry. But I wanted to see math and chemistry in action. I want to fix things. I want to make things. So I decided, well, I will go to university and study engineering. In that town, I was the first girl to decide that I wanted to go to do engineering. So there were no other female engineers in the town. I had no role models whatsoever. And of course, I mean, this is the small town where everybody knows about everyone else. And people were a little bit skeptical. And actually, my parents had to undergo some pressure because there were people speaking to them and say, she just wants to waste her time. There is no way, that's too tough. It's too tough to study engineering for a woman. A girl can't possibly do engineering. You should just convince her to study mathematics instead. She can teach at school. Anyway, this made me even more adamant that I had to study engineering. And of course, there was no way that I could not succeed. I had to succeed. So as you see, already I was under pressure because of this male-female role models that we had in our mind. So I went to Naples and I enrolled in engineering, and that was in chemical engineering. And we were 1% women in my class. We were 5 women at the beginning, and after 1 month, we became 3 women. And we stayed towards all the degree. Of course, I mean, I felt absolutely insecure coming from a small town, and I just concentrated on studying. I didn't have much of a life, to be honest. And I thought I want to work on a chemical plant and then just to graduate as soon as possible. However, things went really differently. It was my last undergraduate year when I had to decide which kind of research project I had to do. And we were asked to go and see different professors and different lecturers, speak to them and decide which subject we would like to have as research project. So I went to speak to a number of academics, and particularly to a professor who was a very well-renowned professor, and he was well-known around the world, and he was one of the most senior professors in my department. I still remember entering his room, his office, and he said to me, "Miss, are you sure that you want to work with me?" He never told me what he wanted to offer me as a research project. He just told to me, "The project I can offer you is extremely difficult. Are you sure that you can do it?" At that point, I was absolutely crossed. I left the office. I went back home. And I said, I don't want to see this guy anymore in my life. But then things went differently. I started to think, and I said, this is not something that is fair. And I need to demonstrate that I really can do that. So I went back after 2 days and I told him, yes, I'm sure I want to do a research project with you. So he said, okay, fine. And amazingly enough, that was the best decisions that I made in my life, because it was really an inspiration. It was really everything I wanted to be when I got my degree. So I wanted to be a researcher just because I wanted to be like him. So I spoke to him, and you see, you have a sort of role model. It's not even a female. There were not female around at the time. So I spoke to him. I said, I want to become an academic. I said, there is no doubt that you have to do a PhD. But you don't want to stay here. You don't want to stay in Italy. You should go somewhere else, because already at that time, he was so adamant that there was diversity in what we did. And that is the first time when diversity really was coming into the picture. He said, you have to go to the United States. And then I found myself at Princeton. And this is the picture of the PhD cohort when I was at Princeton. I'm not going to tell you which one I am. Probably you can spot it by yourself. I'm not sure. But anyway, what I want really to point out is that this was the academic staff. As you can see, all males, all white. I was the only Italian in all departments. I was the only Italian in my class. I was extremely isolated. I didn't enjoy Princeton at all. I just thought I need to study as much as I can and finish as soon as I can so that I can have my degree. When I was at Princeton, my final year at Princeton, I got an interview in Italy, and I got a position like lecturer in Italy, in my alma mater, in the university where I graduated in Naples. So however, I thought, well, I want to go also for an interview in the United States. So I was rehearsing one day with one of my colleagues, and after the rehearsal, she told me, Raffaella, please don't wear that red dress when you go for the interview. And at that point, I thought, that's quite interesting. Anyway, I went for interview. I got this other job, but then eventually I decided to go back to Italy. And I went back to Naples. Of course, I mean, again, I was seen like somebody different. I was now coming back from the United States. I was adamant to bring some novelty into the degree. I wanted to do something completely different. But one day, my head of department called me in his office and he said, Miss, you are really giving us a problem now. You are giving myself a big problem. And I couldn't understand. And I asked him, well, can you explain? He said, yes, you are publishing too much. And at the next competition, my protege will get his promotion anyway, but I have to justify why somebody with more publications will not get a promotion. So it's better if you work less, publish less, or even better, stay home and come to the office less than what you do right now. So at that point, I was not strong enough, I suppose. And then I decided this is not the place for me, and I left. And I found myself in Nottingham. I was in Nottingham. I moved to Nottingham in 1995, 25 years ago. And that was the right place at the right time for me. I was lucky. And you see, this is again a female attitude. When something goes well, we say we are lucky. Anyway, so I found myself in Nottingham. There was the research assessment exercise. It was important that something more, that engineers were doing more some fundamental research. I was the right person for the right post. I got the job. However, of course, I was bringing something completely new, and at Nottingham, I understood what a real engineer is. And I understood that, for instance, my students knew how to do design project much better than I could do it, because I had never done a design project before. But of course, we learn. And while at Nottingham, I was offered a chair in Heriot-Watt, where I am now. And I was the first professor of chemical engineering in Scotland. I was not even 40 years old when I got my professorship. And of course, I mean, I had since then a lot of opportunities. The first conclusions that I can make from all this is that it's not true that it's not a girl world. It is a girl world, engineering. I also know that they are not just role models. We have to look at different people. We can learn from so many different colleagues and friends. Also, I could wear what I want if I really know what is my job and what I want to do in life. And finally, of course, I mean, we have to publish, we have to work hard, otherwise we are not going to achieve what we want to achieve. So some reflections now on my career. I think that we have to make sure that our diversity is our strength. But we have to use it in a positive way. Sometimes I was a little bit too making myself different in a way that was probably not very nice, because I was making other people feeling different from me, and this is not good. We have to have great aspirations, but I want to become a shepherd. I became an engineer, so we have to change when things are going differently. We have to stand by our choice, but we have to also invest, I think, in battles that we can win. I knew that I could become an engineer. I was sure that I couldn't win the battle of getting a promotion in my first institution, so I left. I don't know if that was the right choice, but definitely I thought that I could invest my energy on that. We have to establish our priority, but we have to always to have the full picture in front of us, and we have to have a mentor. But always the advice should be taken very critically. We have to work hard, of course, but we have to come out from our silos and look at the world in all its full picture. And of course, I mean, we have to look for opportunities, but also we have to establish our network. But at the same time, we need to stay focused. Now, I will switch gear just for a second, and I want to go about some reflections from the future, from what I've just told you. To do so, I go back to 1995, 25 years ago, actually exactly 25 years ago, when there was the 4th UN World Conference on Women. And this conference was really an important milestone, I believe, because in that circumstances, actually, it was when governments from around the world agreed on a comprehensive plan to achieve global legal equality. And that is absolutely an extremely good achievement. However, how are we doing today? And this is the latest report from the UNESCO. And you see that if you look at around the world, 53% of bachelor's and master's graduates are female. PhDs, they go back to 43%, research at 28%. And within that 28% now, you can see that the difference is quite astonishing when you go from 44% in Southeast Europe to 15% in Japan. And engineering is really consistently underrepresented everywhere you go in the world. And it goes from solo like 5% in Japan and 10% in Republic of Korea. Now, the important point here that Japan and Republic of Korea are technologically very advanced. So you would expect that there are more women in engineering than everywhere else. And that is not the case. Now, the title of this conference is Global Humanitarian Challenges. And I was reflecting on challenges and goals. And of course, I mean, Gail already introduced the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And if you look at the definition of goals, this is something that we hope to achieve. And I believe that this is not bold enough. I think that we have to do more than that. We really have to achieve that. And we have to work hard and to do a lot of effort and determination to achieve that. I also think that although there is this goal number 5, which is about gender equality, I think that we need to embed diversity and inclusion in all of them. Each one of these goals implies engineering solutions and products. There will be the need for more digital skills, and we are not doing well as women in that area. Women are underrepresented in all the decisions that are about climate change. However, they are the ones that very likely are going to be affected more from climate change, together with all the other low-income groups. So, however, I must say that there are also some very good outcomes. And some of these good outcomes are, for instance, that in Malaysia, 50% of information technology is made up of women. India has seen a very substantial increase in engineering. I'm not going to say why. We can discuss later on about that. But computer science is steadily decreasing in female graduates, and particularly in all that high-income countries that we have seen before. Now, I apologize that this is in Italian. I have to say that, you know, Italy for me represents a little bit like a lab, because in Italy, the pandemic started earlier, and I think that we have to learn something from people who have been through that before us. Now, in June 2020, that newspaper says that 37,000 women left their job, okay? In July, 85,000 new jobs were created, and 8,000 were taken by women. This is astonishing. However, if you look at the data in much more details, you see that these are part-time jobs, very low paid jobs that no man wants to take. So once again, even when it seems like there are more jobs, these jobs are taken at the wrong level. And indeed, probably many of you are aware of the report by the Royal Academy of Engineering and INWES, where the difference in pay between women and men in engineering is just at the higher end of the employment. And in fact, in high position, very well paid positions, only 91% of, up to 91% are men, and 92% are the ones that take the higher pay, of course. So looking into the future, I would go again to that point, and I think that we should promote diversity, because in the future, if we want really to do something different for after the pandemic, we have to have a diversity of solutions. We have to have great aspiration, but we have to be more bold. I'm sorry, I cannot wait another 30 years to see things moving in this area. We have to stand by our choice, but the environment can be much more intimidating these days. I used to give many presentations. I become more nervous now that everything is recorded, and I have to look at my presentation much more than I used to do before. It's a good thing, but we have to really stand by what we believe. We have to establish our priority, like I said, because we cannot wait another 30 years. And we have to have allies, we have to be influencers, but also we have to enjoy the diversity of ideas. We have to work hard, but probably there will be necessity for retraining. There will be a much more digitalization, and we have to be ready for that. We have to look for opportunity, but we have to be prepared for something that is going to be more flexible. And probably it's not going to be exactly something which is going to be good for women. And we have to establish our network. It's good to have all of you today here from all around the world, but it would have been much nicer if I could speak to you afterwards, and if we really could exchange cards after the meeting is over. So reach out essentially is something that we have to continue to do. And this is actually my last slide. And here I was just thinking, what can we do to accelerate the pace? I think that yes, we have to have more people into the area, into the field in engineering and science, but also we have to make sure that there is more diversity on boards, in decision-making positions. We have to have special research grants, fellowship to increase the representation of underrepresented group. And probably we need to reskill and retrain ourselves. And of course, I mean, you can think about many other activities that will enhance the situation about diversity and inclusion. So I think that I would like to stop here, and I hope that there are questions for me. Thank you.
Raffaella, thank you so much. It has been such an emotional presentation. I was typing in the chat room that you reminded me a little bit of myself. I was the only person in my family and my environment who wanted to study engineering. And I didn't know anything when I started studying in this field and what were the challenges. So my aspiration, I think unrealistic aspiration would be every girl in the world to be able to hear your talk and get encouragement to really study science and engineering. That was a really inspiring talk. You will see the comments in the chat. Everyone agrees fully with what I'm saying. Fantastic talk. I have no words again. Faye, would you like to raise any questions for Raffaella?
So yes, as Georgia says, everybody's been very inspired by your talk, sort of sharing some of their stories about perhaps their mothers or themselves, about the challenges that there are. An issue raised that social and economic context in Africa are very different, and sort of how we can go about improving diversity and inclusion in developing countries. That was a question half in the chat and half from in advance from Rufina of Senegal, the Association de Femmes pour la Promotion de Science.
Yes, I think that, I think that the situation really is that in a way, I'm a little bit, I think that we have also to make things different for people who are already into the system. And we have to make sure that essentially for this, we have to make sure that people who are at the low income, people that in Africa, for instance, they will be absolutely affected by climate change. Now in Africa, you see much more people going into agriculture. Engineering has an effect in agriculture. So I think it's the right message there. It's the message that we have to make and probably tell our stories and tell how these SDGs cannot happen if we don't have science and engineering solutions. And we have to inspire the people. I think that for me, it's mainly about inspiration. And only when we inspire people, we can probably make sure that they will do something different. And I'm probably stupid when I say that, everything is possible, because probably it's not that everything is possible. There are differences in other countries, but I think that we have to relate it to the country. And agriculture and what climate can do to Africa, that can be a real good drive for making people more into science and more into engineering, I suppose. But you need also something which comes, probably some incentives that come from another side. I mean, I'm very much against quota. I don't think that that's the right way to do, but you can have studentships. You can have special fellowships just for underrepresented groups. It's what happened in Malaysia, by the way, and that's why you have now in IT that higher numbers. So there are incentives that can be done and should be done.
Excellent, thank you. Dawn has shared with us the World Federation of Engineering Organisations have a Women in Engineering programme that welcome involvement from African countries, where they have some representation but not all countries. So yeah, do look at that, everybody.
Dawn, yes, I know Dawn is doing excellent work in this area.
We have another question for you then. So touching back on your studying, have you been back to any of those universities, Napoli and Princeton, where you didn't have the most amazing experience, and has there been any progress since then?
To be honest, I didn't go back. I didn't go back to Princeton. I didn't have the opportunity. I didn't go back to Naples, despite I used to fly to Naples 4 times per year because my mom is still there in the small town. No, I didn't go back, but I'm sure that many things have changed. I know now that in Italy especially, things have changed dramatically. Don't misunderstand me. I think that in Princeton, it was not that there was not the situation, it was bad because it was me that I couldn't speak very well the language, I still can't. But I think that more importantly, I think that in Princeton now they are female in the academic staff. And that makes such a difference because of course, I mean, we want to see somebody who's more similar to us. We are social people and we want to see people more similar to us. In Naples, they are again more female in the academic staff, but I think that now they are, people are a little bit more careful in Naples and we never address you like Miss. Actually, in Italy, you cannot call anybody Miss now, but Mrs. because you cannot distinguish, you should not distinguish between married and unmarried people. So there is a law about that. But having said that, I thought that, there was so much discrimination that people were not even aware of doing it. And only now my eyes opened. And I was a little bit in denial. I thought that there was not discrimination. And now when I look back, yes, there was discrimination. It was very subtle, but it was there. So I've not been back, no. But I've been to other places and I know that, you know, the situation is improving.
Okay. So a final question and then we will move on. So similar challenges as a female engineering academic from Emma Hellawell, but one challenge that she couldn't overcome was when attitudes for her being part-time after having children and caring responsibilities and how that has interrupted or impacted upon your career. I'm sure that's something probably all of you might be able to answer in, we could pick that up with everybody.
Well, I'm a little bit atypical from this point of view. I don't have children, so this is something that I have, I didn't need to worry about, but I have an old parent. I have an old mom, and my dad passed away, and I had to juggle things when he needed care and my mom needs care, and juggle with my everyday life. And I think that, you know, unfortunately, it's always the same situation. It's not the case that it's always the woman that should take care of that. And I was lucky because my brother shares with me the same commitments for my parents. But I think, this is something that unfortunately falls very much on women. And that's why in Italy, 47,000 women lost their job because they have to take care of their children, being not at school, and they had to take care of their old parents. And I think that, you know, it's a situation that cannot be sustainable. Like Gail said, 50% of the population at the end will not contribute if you perpetuate that. So yeah, I mean, it's difficult from other point of view, yes.
Thank you. All right, I think that's all the questions, Georgia.
Thank you very much. Raffaella, thank you. Fantastic talk. You will see the chat room and make any comments if you want to the participants. I think that everyone got a feeling of what is going to happen next year when we have the big conference in person. And I really hope that this conference will be a platform for everyone, for every woman and man to give their experiences and the challenges that they have faced and really try to inspire and motivate others. I would like to share my screen now and talk to you a little bit about the conference and where we are with our planning. I will speak shortly about the conference and where we are at the moment with the preparation of the event. Before I do that, I would like to say a few words about what inspired us to run this conference and run it in the way that we are going to run it, and also give the theme of global humanitarian challenges to this conference. You will all join me to agree that we are living in a world which is facing tremendous global humanitarian challenges, from diversity crisis to climate change, energy and sustainability matters arising, epidemics and pandemics, globalization and urbanization, inequality, large-scale natural disasters, peacekeeping, refugee crises are arising continuously. It only takes me to say that 800 million people do not have clean water close to home, 2 billion people don't have a decent toilet of their own, 1 billion people lack access to paved roads, cities will home approximately 5 billion residents by 2050, which will be the equivalent of 2/3 of the projected global population. Today, we see the number of people globally living outside of their country of birth rising dramatically. The world is losing species at a rate that is 100 to 1,000 times faster than the natural extinction rate. Epidemics are spreading globally, and we are in the middle of one at the moment. Large-scale natural disasters are happening all over the world, with the global warming being connected to some of them. And What happens in the middle of all these challenges? We are having about 125 million people who are in humanitarian assistance worldwide, and 75% of those are women and children. Of course, the United Nations are recognizing the need for work to be done into tackling these humanitarian challenges. Gail have spoken about the Millennium Development Goals. That was the agenda of 2000 to 2015, mainly focused, we would say, to poverty, education, and hunger, and mainly focused to the developing countries. And at the end of this agenda, there were some really great achievements that were noticed and should be recognized. For example, the percentage of people in extreme poverty has been reduced. The percentage of primary school enrollment in sub-Saharan Africa has been raised. But there was still, by 2015, a lot of work to be done, a lot of accomplishments and achievements to be done. And of course, the United Nations came later, again, with the continuation of the Millennium Development Goals, with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. So as all the other speakers before me said, we are now all working towards these 17 goals. And here I would like to mention my favorite quote. So my favorite quote is from Jan Egeland, former UN Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator, who has said that in the past, when the various agencies tried to provide support to humanitarian challenges, their responses were usually untested, chaotic, amateurish, doubled up, overlapping, or done by mom and pop operations. So he continued saying in the specific interview that saving human lives is no place for amateurs. And why this is happening? Because the poor, dispossessed, and disaster-prone should have at least one basic right left to them, which is to be protected from incompetence. Therefore, for myself, as being involved as the chair and also involved to this conference from 0 point, from when we started discussing about it at Warwick, there was really the feeling that we need to improve the perception of science and engineering in addressing global humanitarian challenges. Beyond charity and volunteering. When we are speaking about challenges, usually what the world is understanding is that we are doing charity and volunteering, which is definitely not the case, and Jayshree addressed that very nicely in her talk. We are speaking about scientists and engineers working into resolving these challenges, and it is mainstream, long-term, and highly skilled professions that we are talking here. And we also need, as individuals, but also as scientists and engineers, to cover the skills gap which exists for scientists and engineers in managing complex interdisciplinary projects, because the challenges are heavily interdisciplinary problems. And we need really to be using and utilizing our skills towards this direction. And of course, women must be part of designing and leading on humanitarian responses, as very nicely Gail addressed in her talk. So this is why the conference is having the theme of global humanitarian challenges, and we are really, really sensitive on the various problems that we need to collectively address in the next 15 to 20 years, let's say, if we wanted to be aligned with the Sustainable Development Agenda of the UN. So the conference is having a number of topics, as you already know. You can see them on my slide here. We have opened calls for abstracts under all these topics, and I will give you an update in a minute. Currently, we are having open one more topic, the call for one more topic to receive abstracts, which is the last one, pandemics and COVID-19. This was a topic that was added to our conference topics recently under the COVID-19 circumstances. So we are still inviting abstracts under this topic. So the conference, under the circumstances, as I said at the beginning, had to be postponed. We are having a new date for the conference, which is 1st to 4th of September 2021. It is going to happen here at the University of Warwick in Coventry in the UK. So Warwick has hosted before ICWES9 in 1991, and we are really, really happy that the event is returning to Warwick after 30 years. So where are we located? For those that are not aware of the university, we are located in the Midlands at the heart of the UK, and we are in a location which is really accessible via air, trains, railways, and motorways. So the closest airport is the Birmingham International Airport. You can reach us within 20 minutes from there, and also from the London airports. Everyone who wants to travel to Warwick will spend less than 2 hours to arrive here, but there are many other ways of accessing the university. This is the overview of our campus. So the conference is happening on campus, on our facilities. This is the overview of our map. So this is this is showing the whole of the facilities of the university. Specifically, the venue for the conference is within the red circle that you see now on your slide. It is a venue which is called the Warwick Arts Centre, and around that place there are a number of accommodation that it is available for the participants to the conference, which you can approach by walking less than 5 minutes or so. The main venue is the venue that you see now on your screen. We call it Warwick Arts Centre. It has been refurbished in the last 2 years, and it is going to be delivered to public in a month later in the year. So it was supposed to be delivered earlier, but due to the COVID-19, there has been a delay into that. So in about a month, it will open their doors to host more events and welcome more participants for other events. What is on that venue? You can see a number of theaters, lecture theaters, workshop rooms, and an art gallery, an arts gallery, a cinema, and restaurants and cafes are going to be available. We are offering on campus a number of student type, but also hotel type of accommodation. So if you're interested, please also check our website about those. On-site amenities for on the campus, we are having a Warwick Sports Hub released to the public a year ago. So a very, very new facility. Cafes, bars, convenience stores are available on campus, like supermarkets, hairdressers, pharmacies, post office, whatever you might need is available on campus, as I said, in a walking distance of 5 minutes. I would like to play here a video about our facilities, and I will take it then from there. So perfect. That was an overview of the campus and the surroundings. So the conference structure, our main sessions will include the opening and closing ceremonies, of course, as expected. Lots of plenary talks, invited talks and poster presentations. And we are also planning to have a number of special sessions and workshops to ensure that we have interaction between the participants. And also we are going to be hosting daily networking events, including the welcome reception, the gala dinner, and an industrial session. As I said previously, I promised to provide you with an update of what is happening at the moment. So we have received 138 abstracts, and those are going to be presented either as talks or as posters during the event from 36 countries. On the right-hand side of my screen, you can see the engagement by regional level. Exciting and fantastic engagement from Africa. I would like to thank all the participants here today, but also all those who have submitted an abstract. It is really amazing and fantastic news to have you all on board for this conference. Keynote and invited speakers. You had the opportunity to experience two of our keynote speakers for next year, who are going to return, of course, with extended talks next year. But on this slide, you can see currently the 5 invited and keynote speakers that we are having. And very, very soon on our website, you will start seeing more keynote and invited speakers being confirmed. We have a very interesting set of speakers lined up. Social program, our conference will be supported with a social program with visits and tours to the Coventry Cathedral, to the Kenilworth Castle, Warwick Castle, or the Stratford-upon-Avon, which is the hometown of Shakespeare, for those not aware. Tours on campus, lots of tours will take place, educational and informative tours will take place on campus. We will be visiting extensively the engineering facilities and the labs and the engineering build space. We will be visiting the Warwick Manufacturing Group facilities and also the science facilities. Key dates for you to keep in mind. As I said, we have a deadline for abstracts only on the topic of pandemics and COVID-19 still open. So please submit your abstracts on that topic if you're interested by the end of this month. The early registration is starting on the 4th of January in 2021, and it is going to close on 30th of April 2021, while the regular registration will be closed on the 15th of August of the same year. Sponsor and exhibitor opportunities on our website. You can find lots of opportunities on how to support the event as a sponsor or as an exhibitor. Please, if you have any interested corporations, please pass our details to them. It is a fantastic opportunity for them to show their commitment to gender diversity and also to promote their business and network with the participants from all over the world. We are going to be offering a sustainable conference, so we are doing our best to minimize the impact of this event to the environment. We are going to have a comprehensive mobile event application in place instead of traditional printed conference programs. We are going to be offering the abstracts and the proceedings only online on USBs to participants. We are going to have ethically sourced and environmentally friendly sponsorship merchandise, also with transportation. We would be encouraging everyone to be using public transport, and also the Warwick Conferences, which is a partner to the event, is holding a bronze level accreditation for its commitment to sustainability. And with regards to what we are doing to keep you safe while you will be at the conference with us, we are following very strictly the guidelines from the government about how events of this type should be running. And we are hoping that next year the situation will be even better. But at the moment, if you want to find out more about how we will run the event and how we will be hosting it in a safe way, you can visit our website and check our reopening brochure, which is giving you information about exactly what we are doing to keep you safe while you are with us. That's my last slide, I would say, or the one before the last one. Please stay connected with us by following our website, following us on Twitter, and please email any questions that you might have about the event on our email. Thank you so much for attending the event today and for also listening to my talk. And we look forward to welcoming you in September 2021 at Warwick. And I would like to invite all members of the panel to turn on their cameras. So Jayshree, Raffaella, and Gail, please turn on your cameras. And if there are any comments or any questions that you would like us to answer at the last minute, please feel free to make them. So I wasn't paying any attention, of course, to the chat. So do we have any further questions or comments that?
So we had some comments asked in advance. So one from Eva from the University of the West of Scotland. She's asked, many of the events focused on female STEM professionals are attended by the usual suspects, females that have similar aspirations to gender equality. Sometimes it feels like preaching to the converted. How do we break this barrier and expand this demographic?
Perfect. Does anyone from the panel want to answer? Raffaella, I saw you nodding, so would you like to pick that question?
I have always been told exactly that, and nice to see that you are there. But I think that, yes, we need to expand what we do. I think that, you know, from my point of view, it's good to have more speaking ourselves, but we have to be more bold. I thought that I don't want to wait another 30 years. So I don't know, I don't want to go in, we have to go into school, but we have to do something else. And I think that the work that Jayshree is doing, that's excellent, to reach people that probably are not aware of what can happen if you have a career in engineering or in a science. And I think that, I don't like very much to tell my personal stories, but I think that if you tell people who are not interested in engineering your personal story, they might be more inspired. And I think that probably you have to start to do also a little bit of that, because there are so many good initiatives, but at the end, I'm afraid that, you know, we speak about ourselves and the data after 25 years are still not so good. The first Athena's won happened in 2006, the first award. I would expect that after 15 years, all of us were gold, and we aren't. So something's wrong. And I think that, you know, we have accelerated the pace, whatever it takes. And the Royal Academy of Engineering has done this excellent initiative of showing what is actually engineering, because Jayshree was saying many people do things with the mobile, and they said that life, science and engineering do not affect their life. I mean, it's miscommunication, I suppose, also from our side. I don't know, but I'm sure that Jayshree has something more to add to this.
Thank you, Raffaella. I agree on the personal stories because they go a long way in inspiring, because role models are important, but I think it's also every place you work, you have to make your voice be heard, and it has to be a credible voice. So obviously you have to do everything that is needing to be done, but then raise your voice. You may think your voice doesn't matter, but it matters. And then especially if you have organizations that bring those voices together. So for example, at 3M, we have Women's Leadership Forum, we have a Technical Women's Leadership Forum chapter, and we are working on a project right now on increasing the number of patents that are awarded to women, and how do we work on that. So working on those issues spreads the word, and then finding allies and advocates. And then one of those things that is very important is the kind of surveys that Gail showed. Those that show that, you know, I really love that line, diverse companies are more innovative and innovative companies are more diverse. The more we start spreading that word in influential, you know, forums, it helps. So it's kind of an ecosystem problem, so it has to be addressed from an ecosystem way. So it is great for women to get together and share issues, so we have a coherent voice, somewhat of a coherent voice, but then we have to make our voice be heard on the outside.
I think one of the advantages of having these international conferences, and a goal of INWES, is to share information. And sharing stories is great, sharing our challenges. But one thing we've been really focused on in INWES is trying to share the information and ideas and programs. And that's why I just touched on a few things and a few recent activities that have happened that are being successful that you can take back to your own university, your own country and use. And that's what we'll be focusing on. What are the winning things? What's happening? What's working well? And share those winning programs and those winning ideas with you. And then you can take them back to your country and to your university or your, employer and say, look, I went to this conference. I learned this information. Would you like to use it? I would like you to use it. Are you aware of the Sustainable Development Goals? What are you doing as an employer to do that? We're giving you materials and information of winning programs that you can share in your own country and your own employer to make advantages, to make advancements. That's what we're sharing.
Thank you so much, everyone, for commenting on that and for the questions and the engagement to the discussion. Faye, is there any other question that we would like to address before we close?
I think one thing somebody was keen to know was what are the major challenges facing our institutions in the next year? It would be good to see if they're common, really.
Yeah, I think Raffaella is going to share exactly the same challenges as I'm going to describe them. So the higher education has been a sector which has been very badly hit by the COVID-19. So in a very short period of time, we had to repurpose whatever we are doing in terms of how we deliver our teaching, in terms of how we are going to be welcoming new students from October in a month, how we are going to be safe ourselves as well, not only the students that are going to come to our university. So a set of problems that we had to resolve. I think if I speak specifically about Warwick, we are in a very, very good position at the moment. During the summer, you cannot imagine how hard we have worked for that at all levels, starting from the top of the senior management of the university and coming down to all of us, all the academics. Tremendous work, tremendous achievements are in place now to ensure that we are going to have and welcome our students safely from October. So we are reopening in 5th of October. We are going to be delivering in a blended way, so face-to-face, but also online learning. Yes, this is where we are at the moment. And of course, the university is reopening again with all other events. As I said previously, we are opening up with conferences, with workshops, with projects funded from the European Union or whatever, which were postponed for a period. Now we will reopen and we start hosting these events and taking action against those again. I don't know if Raffaella would like to add anything to that.
We have already started actually, because in Scotland, universities reopened earlier. And we are doing exactly what you said, Georgia, but it has been a huge challenge towards summer. I don't know, I have not taken any holiday. I think that my colleagues have not taken holidays because to produce this new way, blended way of teaching has been such an enormous challenge for all of us. I think that, I always like to look at crises as challenges and opportunities for the future. I think that we have opportunities here, and we have also opportunities probably for teaching in a different way and also for training our students in a different way. And I think we'll be much more into the digitalization, and this is something that probably we have to teach more to our students, to be more flexible. And we have to teach also how to look more at the social aspect of what we do in engineering. And we are really working very closely with our other disciplines at the moment in my institutions, because we are worrying about well-being of people. We are worrying about so many other things that before probably we were not considering so closely. So I think there is an opportunity there, but the work which has gone into that, and it's going into that, it's incredibly high. Yeah.
So much. Thank you, Raffaella. I think it is time for us to say goodbye, unfortunately, but until next year, I'm really hopeful about that. So thank you very, very much, everyone, for attending today. I hope that you found our online preview event interesting and useful. Thank you very much for your engagement, for your questions, for the comments in the chat room, your enthusiasm. Everything was outstanding. I would like to thank my colleagues, Faye, Stephanie, and Steve for their valuable support for having this event running. There are not enough thanks to Gail, Jayshree, and Raffaella for their amazing talks. We will have more of you next year. And at this point, I would like to encourage everyone to have a look at our website, find out more about the event. And if you have any questions, please contact with ourselves directly on the conference email. In the next days, you will receive the recording of this session. You will receive slides of the speakers if they allow us to share the slides. And you will have also the opportunity to take an online survey to provide us feedback about this event and ideas about the event next year, because we would like to hear from you what you are expecting to see in that event and maybe something that we are missing at the moment. So right now, I would like to ask everyone to turn on their cameras so that we can have a group photo. If someone does not want to have a photo, please keep your camera off. And please take screenshots and share them with ourselves on social media, but also on our email. Thank you very much once again, and we are looking forward to meeting you all at Warwick in September 2021. Thank you, everyone. Fantastic. It is excellent to see so many people from all around the world. I'm really excited. We are looking forward to seeing you next year. Fantastic. It is excellent to see so many people from all around the world. I'm really excited. We are looking forward to seeing you next year. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.